Ready? I am recording. So welcome. What's your name?
Max.
Can you tell us about your background in 1 minute? For 1 minute?
Sure. So my name is Max LeBlanc. I was born in France. I lived in about 3 different countries before I came to New York. I have a background in international relations, in East Asian politics and economics. I also have a minor in biology. And I'm currently a market research analyst at SAS International Research in New York City.
And here is my son Leeor Shimron. Can you tell us how you met?
We met quite a few years back playing tennis at the Forley Rec Club. And we've been playing tennis together ever since.
Yeah, we suffered through the same instructor.
So you just came back from France, you told us.
Yes.
Is it different? How is the feeling there?
France is definitely not the same country that I knew when I first grew up. It's changed a lot politically, and also there's a lot of immigration issues in France that you didn't have previously under other administrations, and just the mentality in general has changed. A lot of depression in French society that you didn't see before. There's a lot of France has been in economic recession for a couple of years, pretty much since 2008 or so, and yeah, you can feel the change. Even though I only go back usually once a year to see my close friends. And
do you know what the unemployment rate is in France?
Right now, the unemployment rate is around 10%, a little bit higher, which is very high. But for the youth, meaning those that are just out of college between 18 and 24, it's probably higher than that. And there's also a very big gap between unemployment between the immigrants and those of the local populations, and that's also been one of the problems.
Do you agree with the policy of the government regarding immigration?
Well, that's a policy.
Accepting refugees, for example?
The Syrian refugees?
What do you think about that?
It's very hard. I think the issue is I think a lot of Europeans are going to generalize the Syrians, a lot of them as terrorists, because I think the issue is that if you let all the Syrians in, all it takes is one person out of those refugees to be a terrorist and cause problems in the country. Apparently a lot of the terrorists that have caused attacks in Europe disguise themselves as refugees. And since the borders in Europe are all opened up because of the European Union, they don't check visas. Once you get into one European country, they don't check visas or control. So if you carry a weapon through Turkey, for instance, once you're in Greece, for instance, you don't have to declare it anymore in any of the European countries. So a lot of resources and a lot of.
So you think they should put some limitations?
Yeah, they need to shut down the European borders, get rid of that Schengen zone that allows for free travel visas. It's very nice and convenient for tourists, but it's very dangerous. And at a time when terrorism has never been higher in Europe, having open borders is not the solution.
So you're not saying necessarily closing up borders, you're saying just having stricter controls?
Well, yeah, but I think you also, you need to start checking visas at the border and really getting good background checks, because a lot of terrorists have slipped through.
So Leo, what do you think about Donald Trump's ideas of putting a wall between America and Mexico? We're jumping to United States now.
Well, I think it's definitely, besides it being a very a racist act essentially, it's also just going to hurt the U.S. because we get a lot of cheap labor from Mexico, and when you start isolating yourself from other countries, that's how you stop the spread of intellectual ideas and you kind of implement cultural barriers, and that could never be a good thing. You want to have as many different diverse types of people, diverse types of groups to come together in order to work on problems, and whenever you're trying to put up these borders.
So you support illegal immigration, like sneaking through the borders?
Well, I think that we need to have a process in place in order to legitimize and also make immigration legal so that people can come across the border, but do so in a way that is responsible, in a way that will allow for people to come in and to be
So what do you think about Trump's ideas regarding China, Japan? He thinks that they are taking advantage of the U.S. economy by dumping here tons of products that people don't really need.
I think it's clear that Trump does not have a very good understanding of basic economics, because when you try and put trade barriers between countries, that's when total output decreases. If you look at basic economic trade theory, is that you want there to be specialization of industries within countries, because inherently countries are going to be better at producing things than other countries. When you put up these borders, and it makes everything more expensive. And China can produce things much more cheaply than the U.S. can, and we can produce things much cheaper than China can.
Comparative advantage.
Yeah.
But what about the huge debt that America faces? Over $20 trillion. I mean, part of it is owned by the Chinese and Japanese.
Right, and I mean, we already have a big debt with China, and I think that if we close ourselves even more often, it's not that it's going to improve the debt or make it better in any way.
It's not going to make it smaller.
Well, we already owe China a lot of money. Our economies are very tightly linked, and if we try and get into some sort of trade wars with China, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot because of how closely we're linked with them economically.
What do you think about Donald Trump?
Well, he certainly knows how to attract a crowd, attract an audience. He's the art of a demagogue. That's what I would call him. He attracts, he pretty much, when I see Donald Trump, I see him as a barometer of the type of issues you have in the U.S. A lot of people are probably sick of, I think, of the division, especially the divisions between the Republicans and Democrats and so on. He pretty much tells Americans what they want to hear. And he says it very out loudly and clearly. He certainly doesn't care about critiques. The guy, he's a billionaire, so clearly he's funded his own campaigns. He'll never run out of funding. He doesn't rely on anyone to do his funding for him. I think the problem with Donald Trump is he thinks because he's not, he claims he's a self-made billionaire, which is not true because his father was in real estate and he's the one that first got him started. But I think the problem with Donald Trump is he assumes because he was a success with his business that he can transfer all that over with his political skills, and those are very two different skill sets. And he doesn't have a sense of foreign
policy. To be a good
policy.
politician, you have to be a diplomat.
And he's not diplomatic. He doesn't have any understanding of world politics, and he doesn't care. I think personally.
You're going to have to negotiate with world leaders, and no one's going to take him seriously.
Yeah, he's under the assumption that he can play with his own rules, but globalization, especially when it comes to trade, you're not going to always have your way, and he's going to, he's.
So what do you like about Bernie, Leeor?
Well, I like what he stands for and his integrity. I still want to see what he comes up with in terms of actual solutions and how we can address a lot of the tax restructuring that he claims to do in terms of the income inequality, which is basically his main platform. Is obviously the top 1% owns something like 40% of the nation's wealth, which is absurd and ridiculous. And we need some sort of method, some mechanism of redistributing that wealth, because otherwise it's just too much power at the top and in the hands of the few. So I like kind of what he's saying and what he's preaching, but he hasn't really at this point put forth any real solutions, any realistic and tangible solutions. But assuming he will soon. But I just think what he stands for at this moment is definitely quite, I think it's honest and something we should be looking toward.
Forward. What do you say?
Well, I like Bernie Sanders. I mean, he is a little, in some senses, there are some things I think that he says that are a little bit radical, but the one thing I do like about him is that, like I said earlier before, America doesn't really have a welfare state. And, to me healthcare in this country is terrible, I think. And I think, the fact that you have to pay so much just to get a basic education, a college degree, I think is absurd. And I think he's the type of leader where he would say, enough with constant military spending, and using it more on welfare and in infrastructure. And infrastructure in the U.S. is not very good either. Actually, I think out of, what do we have? I think we have about 194 countries. I think the U.S. is actually 160th in terms of infrastructure development. And so it means you actually have developing countries that are far more advanced in infrastructure. And so I think he needs to spend a little bit more on domestic policy and not spending so much money overseas. And I think he's the type of leader that would try to address the $1 trillion student debt you have in the U.S. and try to get college to be more affordable.
Right.
And it's ridiculous. It's like, students after they graduate are in tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And it's like once they start having a job, it's not like they can put it away and save. They have to repay the loans with interest of what they're paying back, and that's not a life.
Talking about student debt, I think actually Elizabeth Warren talked a lot about this point, and she's an advocate of kind of, we see how the banks are profiting so much off of student debt.
Of course.
They're charging what, 5, 6, 7% interest.
It's not a fixed rate.
Yeah.
At least.
And they're borrowing from the central bank at, well, I mean, the Fed just increased the discount rate to about like 0.75%.
For the first time in a long time.
Yeah, but that's still, look, less than 1%, and they're, reloaning that money out to students at anywhere between 5 to 10%. So you see that huge gap where they're profiting off of, student education.
It's
It's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And when you go to Germany, me being from Europe, in Germany, for instance, schools free. Finland, same thing. They have an excellent education system. Denmark, same thing. I think the problem, the issue in the U.S. also is that the education leading up to university is not good. Primary and secondary schools, I don't think are as good, say, as overseas. But once they get into university, I think comparatively they're at similar levels. But education reform is definitely needed, and I think it's not fair that top education is only given to those who have good financial background.
But from what I hear now from both of you is that you prefer more government intervention in the economy, in the people. Don't you think it's better to let the market do its own? What do you say, Leeor?
I think you don't want too much of a command economy. Obviously, that's not going to work. We've seen a lot of fascist states and dictatorship fail. But we do need, you see other examples of European countries and even Canada where they have things like single-payer healthcare, where the government is providing healthcare and it works fantastically well, and it's a lot cheaper than the U.S.
That's right.
I think you need some forms of government intervention, especially where market forces are just inefficient and cause essentially just a lot of wealth just to be in the hands of the few.
Now I'm going to jump to something totally different. Any of you think that there is life after death?
Life after death? Well, it's a philosophical question.
From politics to philosophy.
Yes, anything. We cover a few areas at the same time.
Life after death.
Or there is a different world that is even better than that.
I think...
Wait, let's Leeor say what he wants.
According to the scientific evidence, which is pretty much the only thing that we can, reliably count on, we just don't know. And there's no way of proving, at least according to our knowledge. And anyone that claims that they do know is, I would assume, just full of crap, because they're trying to work off of the emotions and fears of people. And you see that throughout, millennia with religions and how, they essentially profit off of, essentially, I don't want to, I think there's been a lot of religions that have worked off of the same types of human fears and humans' emotions. And also with the Catholic Church, you see how they essentially profit off of people's kind of
manipulating minds of people.
Yeah.
Especially those that are impressionable at a young age. But I really personally believe that if you can see it, then it's real. That's mostly.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you see the internet moving from here to China? Why do you believe in internet? You cannot see it moving. Or radio waves. It still exists.
We still have evidence that they exist. We may not see it with our own eyes, but we have ways of measuring it. We have tools that we use to measure it. Whereas if you say, if you strap a bomb to your chest and you die in the name of Allah and you're going to have 72 virgins, what proof is there for that? Just someone's word for it?
How about one virgin 72 years old?
Yeah. and you're just trusting the word of an older person within your tribe, within your community. And why haven't they done it then? If they're kind of manipulating the youth in order to kind of do their bidding and to do their dirty work. Something like, I think when it comes down to it, you look at the Taliban, you look at Osama bin Laden, and it's funny how Osama bin Laden, like when he orchestrated 9/11, he used, younger people who were impressionable and they could be easily manipulated. And he was, in his town of, in his mansion with all of his wives, and it was Abbottabad. Mm-hmm. And that's where he was found, just living at home, kicking back, he with his little harem. And why wasn't he, in the forefront of the fight, strapping a bomb to his chest? I feel like he was just using it for his own political gain and manipulating the minds of the younger generation.
Uh-huh. So what brings a young guy bomb himself in the name of Allah? Why would he do that?
Usually in a country that he doesn't feel integrated in. You know, France, for instance, you have a lot of suburbs in Paris, and also actually in London and also in Britain as well. They don't. There are certain countries in Europe, for instance, that don't integrate their minorities. When I mean by minorities, I'm talking about Arabs. So they don't feel loyal. They don't really feel part of the society. So they don't feel French or British, for instance. They still feel allegiance to wherever their parents may have come from, or wherever that may be in the Middle East. And so when they, you know, when they feel like they're suffering, they're going to take their vengeance out onto the state. And you know, these are the type of minds that ISIS, for instance, would like to recruit. You know, those that are manipulative, those that feel vengeful. You know, those that feel they have nothing to lose, right? And so if you attack, you know, that's sort of the type of people where if you attach a bomb to their chest, they really have nothing to lose. You know, that's just what they feel that's what they feel that they're meant to do. And you know, some of these minds, you know, they've just been, you know, psychologically brainwashed to a point where there's no really a point of return. That's what I think. I mean,
do you believe there is God?
Well, personally, yeah. I mean, I'm not a religious person at all. Yeah, I do believe it, but I also think that, you know, at the same time.
One God, few gods, something else.
No, I guess one God for everyone. But I guess at the same time, there are so many incidents that I think should have prevented that, and you always would think that, you know, why did God let that happen? You know, for instance, you know, the Holocaust, for instance, or any type of, you know, mass murder or genocide. It's like, you know, where was God in those times, you know, for when people needed them most, you know? And so...
In your opinion, Leeor, about that?
Well, I would say I'm more agnostic, and...
Which means?
Which means that you can't say one way or the other there's a God or there isn't a God. You know, obviously, like, you can try and find evidence one way or the other. It's also how you define God. You know, do you find him as just a man in the clouds who is looking over all of our actions and rewarding us and has his own ledger about whether we're being good or we're being bad, and how do we, you know, how does he take morality into it? But if you define God as more of like just everything that exists in the universe and how all of the mechanisms that work together, you know, whether it's on a small or a large scale, and there are a lot of forces at work that we don't understand, and that we just either we're not evolved enough to even begin to ask the questions. Like, look at quantum physics, which is in a very nascent or very young field that we still, like, it's extremely unintuitive. But we're just starting to, you know, wrap our heads around it, and who knows where, you know, the state of physics and science will be in the next 100, 200, 300 years, where we can truly have the tools to ask the big questions about how reality works, and just ask the questions of how we came to exist, because there's still so much that we don't know.
I have another philosophical question. We see around us that some good people don't get rewarded for the good they do, and evil and bad people get rewarded. Do you believe in the long term, or in general there is karma, or do you believe in karma? Do you believe that everyone will get what he deserves? What do you think? Do you believe in that, Yoni? Leeor?
It's a good question. It's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, but I haven't yet really don't really have a conclusion at this point. But I'll have to still think about it. So I can't give you a good answer one way or the other.
If less people believe in God.
Yeah. On the one hand, I think that it's nice to believe in something like that, and it's very consoling to believe that, yes, everyone gets what they deserve, whether it's in this life or the next life or the previous life, or if there is reincarnation. It's very nice to believe in. Still, there isn't much evidence for it. But on the other hand, you know, if you look at morality, it's kind of just a story that we tell ourselves in a way that we can cooperate on a daily basis. There are rules and ethics that we all give ourselves in order for us to, you know, fulfill our needs and to basically just get from day to day.
All right, thanks. And what do you say?
The karma question.
Yes.
No, not necessarily. I mean, you know, yeah.
You don't think there is justice in this world?
No, not always. In some cases there are, but like, I'll give you one example. I think in South Africa, for instance, you know, Nelson Mandela, what he fought for, you know, to eliminate apartheid, right? obviously he passed away with a legacy of getting rid of apartheid in South Africa, but now the current leadership under his name is Jacob Zuma, he's trying to correct the wrongs. He's trying to pretty much correct the wrongs of those that have committed apartheid in South Africa right now. And so it's like, where's the justice in that after all someone good fought for now is trying to be brought back, and so not always. Okay, like in the Holocaust, the Nazis that still exist, obviously the Nuremberg trials, many were executed, so they certainly got what they deserved, but there are still some evil men that still walk around, you have people in courts, for instance, that even though
let's finalize it. What do you wish us for the 2016? I'm going to ask you the same question for yourself.
For 2016, well, I hope there's going to be much more coordination between countries in dealing things with climate change, for instance, that there's going to be much more environmental awareness, because to me, a global economy will not survive unless you have a clean environment that's going to be behind it and back it up. And so I hope that there's going to be more collaboration between leaders. Another thing is to continue to hopefully the fight with child poverty and eliminate areas in say sub-Saharan Africa, for instance. And I also hope that there'll be a lot more. Well, I mean it's inevitable, but it'd be great if there's a lot less mitigation conflict in the Middle East. And
what do you hope for yourself to achieve?
To discover what I love, because I think that I actually, sometimes when you don't know what you like until you go into it. And I have to tell you, even though I have my job now, it's not something I ever thought I'd fall into. Market research is not what I studied in school. I studied policy. This is more, more on business side. So finding out what I actually like to do, I hope that's one goal, because I have to be honest, I don't know what that is yet, and I'm hoping to discover that. And also, I think having a good change of environment, I've traveled a lot, and I think once I'm able to live in different countries and I'm able to experience more, that I found out more about myself. And I think just to learn more about yourself, because I think in your 20s is when you're going to learn most of that.
How about you, Leeor?
I like a lot what you said about climate change, and I think, in terms of a global perspective, I hope that people can start to kind of turn away from being so selfish and so much of an in-group mentality, and kind of expand their horizons, expand their perspectives, and start to care more about, and trying to put themselves in the shoes of other people, and also in terms of next generations to come. I feel like kind of like the next step in human evolution is more about thinking about, our species as, one group, and trying to best provide for our species and make sure that we have the tools necessary to, move forward and to progress. And I think climate change is one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now that can essentially destroy our world and destroy humanity. And that's something that we really have to focus on and make sure that we allocate resources to solve those solutions, to find the solutions for those problems. Now, for myself,
how do you like living in California?
It's awesome, and I want to definitely live there for at least a couple more years and see what I can. I don't know. There's definitely a lot of question marks, and I don't know. And there's a lot of uncertainty, which is exciting because don't know which direction my life is going to go necessarily. Though, kind of mirroring what Max said, I think now in our early 20s is a good time to experiment and to try living in different places and to meet different types of people and really find our passion. So. Yeah, for 2016, I want to find my passion. I want to find kind of a way that I can integrate my passion.
What you don't like about the job that you're doing today?
That's a negative question.
Don't tell me that you like it 100%.
What I don't like about it? I don't like being confined to a desk job, working a 9 to 5. So hopefully I can find my passion where I can do it from anywhere, from home, can travel.
That's a great answer.
And where I can make money for myself and be my own boss, and do so in kind of any environment and have the flexibility so that I can maybe even be bi-coastal, live in California and come here when I want. So.
All right, I want to wish both of you great 2016, and thank you very much.
Thank you.